Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, I'm Rusty. We are from Group A, and we are going to present our mini research. Before we start, let me introduce the member of the group. First is Keisa Askanaura, Pratama Bima Amanta, Safira Nirmalasani, dan Safira Gibaran. So here is the table of content. There is introduction, methodology, visual, discussion, and reference. So here's the title that we choose for the mini research. The title is Lexical and Structural Ambiguity in Chapter 1 of the short story The Little Prince. Okay, so for the first part will be presented by Keisha.
Okay, for the introduction part, first is background. So language is not only direct meaning but also multiple interpretation, a phenomenon known as ambiguity, which is central to linguistics studies, particularly semantics and syntax. Ambiguity can be lexical when a word has more than one meaning, or structural when sentence grammar permits multiple interpolations. In modern linguistics, ambiguity is seen as a natural and enriching feature of language rather than an error. In literature, it is often used deliberately to create depth, aesthetic value, and interpretive engagement. The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry exemplifies this as its seemingly simple language contains rich lexical and structural ambiguities that convey philosophical meanings and allow diverse interpretation across different readers. Next slide. Okay, although has been widely discussed in linguistic theory, it is rarely applied to the detailed analysis of specific literary texts. So most studies focus on general language data on language change rather than a narrative discourse, and research on the Little Prince typically emphasize symbolism and moral themes, while linguistic structures and word choices receive limited attention. However, even a simple syntactic construction can produce ambiguity due to the grammatical blending and scope. Consequently, there is a lack of research examining how lexical and structural ambiguities function in the text, particularly in the first chapter, which establishes the story's style and perspective. Next slide. Okay, the study analyzes lexical and structural ambiguities in the first part of The Little Prince by identifying ambiguous words, expression, and sentence structure and explaining how lexical choices and syntactic patterns generate multiple meanings. The research aims to demonstrate that ambiguity functions as a deliberate linguistic strategy that enriches literally meaning that rather than as a byproduct of language use. By applying ambiguity theory directly to a literary text, the study contributes to literary linguistics and highlights how ambiguity depends interpretation in The Little Prince. Next slide. Okay, so for the problem we got first, what kind of lexical ambiguity appears in the first chapter of The Little Prince? And second, how can the sentence structure in the story of The Little Prince cause structural ambiguity? And the purpose we got to identify and describe the types of lexical ambiguity found in the first chapter of The Little Prince, and then to analyze how sentence structure contributes to structural ambiguity in The Little Prince. Next slide. Okay, we got literature review. First, it's for philosophical and symbolic. For example, like the word, the fox, rose, and sheep, and then language is treated merely as a transparent tool to convey meaning, not as primary subject for scrutiny. And the last one is how its linguistic structure creates the potential for wide-ranging interpretation. Okay, next slide. Okay, for this methodology part is will be explained by Safira.
Okay, thank you, Keisha. For next is methodology. The first is method. The study employ a qualitative descriptive research method. The research focused on textual analysis to examine linguistic ambiguity found in a literary text. Qualitative research is considered appropriate because the study aims to describe and interpret meaning rather the mean measure numerical data. The analysis is by researching word, phrase, and sentence structure that potential contain lexical and structural ambiguity. For the next, for the next is data and data source. For the first is data are selected word, phrase, and sentence from the first chapter of the Little Prince. The text serves as both the data and data source. So the third, the study analyze lexical ambiguity, like multiple meaning of word and structural ambiguity, is multiple interpretation due to sentence structure. The next, the English version is used for consistent linguistic analysis. The last is the first chapter is chosen for its rich narrative style, symbolism, and ambiguous expression that support meaning construction and stylist analysis. The next is instrument. The first primary instrument, the researcher. The first qualitative study relies on researcher skill, capability, observe, interpret, analyze linguistic data. The next supporting tool is analysis checklist. The first record key detail for each ambiguous item. The capture is content, context, type of ambiguity, and possible interpretation. Verification refers is the dictionary and grammar books. Purpose verify multiple meanings, syntax structure, for the benefit, accurate classification, minimize subjective bias. And the last, no additional formal tools or no extra tool or table use. Next slide, please. For the next is data collection. The first is data we collect through document analyze. So the next, the research read the first chapter of the Little Prince several times. After that, word, phrase, and sentence with more than one possible meaning or structure were identified, underlined, or and listed. For the next is data represent instead of lexical and structural ambiguity. And for the last, all data are used as qualitative evidence to analyze the function of ambiguity in the narrative. And then next, data analyze for methodology of review is use descriptive linguistic analysis for data examination and lexical ambiguity analysis. So the second identifies word with more than one possible meaning, and the last classifies and interpret based on story context. For structural ambiguity analysis, the first examines a sentence structure, focus on phrase attackment, and the last analysis syntactic relationship. For the classification and interpretation, the first is example classified as lexical or structural ambiguity. The the second interpret via possible meaning and the story context. For presentation on findings, the first present in descriptive format, and the last support by direct example for the next. Next slide. For the next slide will be presented by Bima.
Okay, thank you, Safira. Now I will explain the result of the analysis of lexical and structural ambiguity in the short story, The Little Prince. The first analysis focused on the lexical ambiguity. There are 3 lines used for the analysis. So for the first line is, they always answer, it's a hat. This line represents how adults interpret the drawing literally as a hat, while the children see it as a boa constrictor swallowing an elephant. Because in actually the Little Prince was intended to draw the things that he stated. And this line is also reflects how adults are limited by conventional thinking. Adults are used to seeing things practically and literally, so they miss imaginative perspective. And this line is set the stone for the story, showing a clear difference between childlike imagination and adult logic. Then the second line is I asked them but if my drawing is frightening them. Ambiguity comes from the word frightening that has different emotional meanings for adult and the Little Prince. Since the adult only see it as hat, the word has no relevance. And through this line shows how emotion and perception influence understanding. It's a reminder that adults often respond logically and children respond more emotionally and imaginatively. Then the third line is, I wanted to know if they could really understand. This line represents how adults interpret the drawing only in literal meaning, which is as a hat, the adult missing the imaginative perspective, which leads to misunderstanding. The word understand in this line has 2 meanings. The first one is recognizing the shape of the drawing, and the second one is grasping the imagination the the drawing. Adults usually only see the literal side and missing the imaginative part. These show the story that sometimes adults can fully understand things they haven't experienced or imagined. So based on the 3 of the line in this analysis, we can conclude that lexical ambiguity shows that understanding depends on personal perception and context. Words can carry different meanings for children and adults, revealing how imaginations, experience, and perspective influence how we interpret language. Next slide. Okay, so for the second analysis is the structural ambiguity analysis, and there are also 3 lines used for the analysis. So for the first line is, grown-ups never understand anything on their own. The word never and anything in this line make the sentence interpretable in multiple meanings, which refers to difficulty of the adult in understanding imaginative perspective of a children. This line also reflects the Little Prince frustration with adults who struggle to understand imaginative ideas. This line also shows how sentences structures can affect meaning and express critique. Then the second line is, whenever I met one who seemed faintly perceptive. This sentence is structurally ambiguous because the is one who does not clearly specify who it refers to. In the context of the story, it could be any adult the Little Prince meets, but the sentence doesn't say for sure. This archetypally leaves the meaning open, allowing readers to interpret it in different ways. Then the third line, my drawing was not of a hat. The sentence contrasts what the drawing looks like with with what it actually represents, creating ambiguity. Adults assume it's a hat, but the true meaning is revealed later, show the difference between appearance and images. So from the 3 lines that used for the analysis, we can conclude that structural ambiguity highlights that sentences construction itself can create multiple meanings. The way a sentence is structured may lead to different interpretations, emphasizing how readers' understanding is shaped not only by words, but also by how they are arranged. Okay, so for the next material, which is discussion, will be explained by Zafir.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll explain about the discussion part. So, what kind of lexical ambiguity appear in the first chapter of The Little Prince? So, in The Little Prince, lexical ambiguity emerged through shift between adult and child viewpoints, as in if words such as had, frightening, and understand. These meanings are shaped by pragmatic and cognitive context rather than dictionary definition alone. Consistent with Leach and Short and Brinton and Trout, ambiguity function as a stylistic research that invites interpretation and reflects how meaning is constructed through experience and worldview. And the second one is how does sentence structure in The Little Prince give rise to structural ambiguity? In The Little Prince, even simple sentences allow multiple interpretations due to scope, relation, negation, and unclear synthetic attachment. For example, statement involving quantifiers and negation can be interpreted absolutely or contextually. Ambiguous referential expression further demonstrate how synthetic under-specification creates interpretive openness. Consistent with Leach and Short, structural ambiguity function as a deliberate stylistic device that encourage reader engagement. Next part, please. And here the references that we had. Next part, please.
Okay, that's all from us. Sorry if there are any disrupt or mistake. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.